Welcome to Trial Site News Weekly Roundup. My name is Adrian and I'll be going over some of our top news stories from this past week. Please click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of future videos. This week we start our roundup with clinical trial-related news. The US FDA has granted priority review designations to 5 new drugs in 2020, giving these treatments the potential for early approval. Priority review is granted to therapies that the FDA determines have the potential to provide significant improvements in the treatment, diagnosis, or prevention of serious conditions. This designation shortens the FDA review period following the acceptance of the NDA to 6 months, compared to 10 months under standard review. Emory University faculty and staff conduct research across every discipline. The Emory News Center recently published a summary of highlights of recent grant awards and published research findings. Summary of grants from Emory News Center consists of a $5 million 5-year Specialized Center for Research, or SCORE, grant to the Winship Cancer Institute Multiple Myeloma team from the Leukemia of Lymphoma Society. A $3.5 million 5-year grant to study synaptic changes and imbalanced neuroactivity in Parkinson's disease. The grant originates from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke and is committed to neuroscientists Yolan Smith and Thomas Wichman. Now, this project includes both non-human primates experiments and a longitudinal ultra-high MRI study of patients with Parkinson's disease at the University of Minnesota. Also, a $2.5 million 4-year grant to Emory neuroscientists led by Stella Papa, Associate Professor in the School of Medicine, and Stefan Tynelis, Professor of Pharmacology, study changes in striatal projection neurons in animal models of Parkinson's disease. Next, a $1.1 million grant from the CDC to researchers in the School of Medicine to identify prevention methods for healthcare-associated infections. The project leverages Emory's unique experience with the safe care of patients with Ebola virus disease and human factors evaluations of high-level persona protective equipment, or PPE, use. Now, elsewhere, a Northern California-based research collaborative involving UC San Francisco and Stanford team members have discovered that lansoprazole, an over-the-counter acid reflux drug often consumed by pregnant women, may in fact represent a promising therapy to reduce preterm birth. Now, the research findings are based on a computational drug repurposing study that additionally investigated several of the drugs in mice. With nearly 200 million people, Nigeria is by far Africa's most populated nation, as well as largest GDP, just beating out South Africa with a diversified, enterprising, and dynamic population, not to mention a myriad of health challenges and needs. The burgeoning nation has struggled on the healthcare front, ranking far lower than most of its neighbors. Clinical research may represent a framework to bring together healthcare assets nationwide in a way that encourages outside-the-box thinking, in such a way that there is the potential to leapfrog the existing constraints to help the country not only bring state-of-the-art treatments to the world's 7th most populous country, but also infuse its healthcare system with transformative energy, enterprise, and economic development. A recent conference titled the Clinical Investigator Summit brought together key stakeholders representing clinical research to discuss the state of clinical trials in Nigeria. Now, could clinical research represent a path to exponential progress in Africa's most populous nation with the largest GDP? Time will tell, and we'll keep you posted on this story as it continues to develop. Emory University investigators are exploring the use of psychedelic drugs as a potential therapy for major depressive disorder. According to a local broadcast, a local woman has seen her life turn around thanks to the controversial intervention. The investigation centers on the use of Psilocybin, or magic mushrooms. And now we turn to neurological related news. In observational research, a multi-centered team of investigators called the Spanish Pediatric Anti-MOG study group discovered that 85% of children in a study with life-threatening autoimmune conditions had complete or near complete recovery after a specific biomarker was identified and the patients were subsequently given the appropriate treatment. Now, this discovery, originating in Spain, could accelerate the diagnosis and treatment of children with life-threatening diseases. The study represents a milestone in the quest to understand MOG antibody-associated syndromes. Elsewhere, Monash University investigators are in pursuit for a new treatment for multiple sclerosis, or MS, that they believe may actually reverse effects of the disease on the brain. They are exploring the use of exponential drug called DIPTA. Now, during preclinical research on mice, they found that paralyzed mice were able to actually walk again. Although still in early state preclinical research, Trial Site News is upbeat about the news for future MS treatments. And now we turn to virus-related news. China's booming clinical trial sector, a critical part of the government's healthcare modernization initiative, now faces an imminent threat by the fast-spreading coronavirus. Although global and local biopharma companies have invested billions to tap into and expand in the country, they face disruption and potentially losses associated with delays and cancellations. Will China have to modernize certain practices, such as wet markets where it appears the virus has originated from? Time will tell. And now for autoimmune. Investigators from the Garvan Institute of Medical Research have pinpointed individual cells that cause autoimmune disease from patient samples. The Australian-based team also have identified how these cells can go rogue by evading checkpoints, typically stopping immune cells from targeting the body's own tissue. These observations could represent significant implications for the diagnosis and treatment of autoimmune diseases. And now for clinical challenge stories. A federal civil lawsuit has been filed against a state agency and several officials alleging a conspiracy to silence complaints about shocking and outrageous research projects involving sexual arousal investigations at an Iowa care center for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD. In what a disgusting, gut-wrenching behavior if true, this would represent a tale not even the most twisted Hollywood B-horror writer could conjure up. Now, if some of these allegations are valid, how in the world could the state of Iowa let this happen? Trial Site News exists to track research, celebrate the good, and shine a light on dark corners of research that need exposure, and this situation certainly doesn't look good. And now for Alzheimer's related news. The Alzheimer's Association Part The Cloud Translational Research Funding Program granted $750,000 to a team of researchers from Brown University, Butler Hospital, and the Miriam Hospital to conduct a Phase 1, a 2.5-year clinical trial that will assess the potential therapeutic effect that a class of HIV drugs can have on the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Now, by using a on-the-shelf drug made by Gilead to repurpose for another disease, positive results would indeed represent a promising breakthrough. The investigators wait approval by the Institutional Review Board, or the IRB. And now for cancer-related news. An elite scientific team developing new CAR T-cell gene therapy treatment for advanced metastatic prostate cancer at Abramson Cancer Center of the University of Pennsylvania received a $500,000 grant from Alliance for Cancer Care Therapy, or ACGT. Trial Site News will monitor this research originating from one of the top gene cell therapy researchers in the world. The University College London, or the UCL, is employing new technology helping their investigators to analyze individual cells, which can potentially lead to personalized therapies in the future. By developing technology that offers scientists to analyze the behavior of millions of different cells residing inside of lab-grown tumors, the Cancer Research UK-funded initiative offers new insight into how mutated cells mimic the growth signals that are expressed by normal, healthy cells. Do you have any clinical news you'd like us to report on? If so, let us know. Contact information is in the box below. Thank you for joining us for this week's Trial Site News Roundup, and remember, subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of updates. We'll see you next time.